Good morning, it's my real name is and today we're talking about seriously? We're talking about NDAs, or non-disclosure agreements. Did my lighting really just change right as that was? God, why does this have such a mind of its own? So first of all, what is an NDA? Well, according to my notes here, an NDA is a legally binding contract between parties. Legally binding contract, what does that mean? A contract is a legally binding agreement, but legally binding, a common legal phrase, implies lawful action, such as an agreement consciously agreed to by two or more entities establishing lawful accountability. So, an NDA, or a contract in general, is an assurance that you will act a certain way and perform certain duties for certain people, and if you don't, you will get in trouble. Right? No. A contract is a piece of paper with a bunch of blots on it that when you look at those blots implies that there are things that you should or should not do. I cannot stress this enough. A contract is simply just a piece of paper, and it is only as good as the people who are enforcing it. So realistically, you can throw anything you want into that contract, and whether or not that holds up in a court of law is entirely up to the people who are executing said laws. The Constitution works in a very similar way. Hi, I live in Minneapolis. You can also debate a contract with your employer. I frequently do look through contracts, and if there's something that I think is particularly comical, I will point it out. They will usually either modify it or remove it entirely. People, at least good people in business, are usually willing to work with you. In fact, this type of thing usually happens a lot in the film industry, if the contract is even going to be followed in the first place. Because here's another secret about contracts: they are usually not made for you. In fact, I would go as far to say 9 out of 10 times the contract is just a generalized statement that's been put together by the attorney or some other person in the business, and it is just sent out as a blanket statement to everyone. How do I know this? Well, for example, I do a lot of work for really, I can't say okay, I do a lot of work for an industrial manufacturer who specializes in adhesives. And that manufacturer has me sign a contract every time I show up to work with them. It states that I am not permitted to make any video recordings or photos or audio recordings or any documentation of any sort whatsoever on the job. My video job, where I'm recording their processes. I am legally, according to their contract, not allowed to do that whatsoever. Why is that in the contract? Well, again, it's in the contract because that company works with a lot of technicians, a lot of suppliers, a lot of people who are constantly engaging in trade secrets. That contract was drafted up specifically to make sure they do not share any of the things that they do, because producing such things like adhesives, special types of coatings, different alloys, all of that stuff is very, very sensitive information and also goes completely beyond my head. If that information were to get out, it puts the company at major risk. The company owes it to itself to keep that information as secure as possible. So they have a contract drafted up for all of their technicians and other workers, product lines, all that fun stuff, telling them what they can and cannot do. So when the media shows up to record it, such as myself, well, they're not going to change that info. Why did my lights change again? But they don't just have a contract specifically for media. Very few people do. This is why in the film industry, contracts are mostly just kind of disregarded. I'm saying the quiet part out loud here right now. That's kind of why I'm doing it on my personal channel rather than my professional one, but yeah, we mostly just ignore them. Now, this is also for a lot of reasons. Like, for example, working on a lot of different projects, they have you sign what is called a work-for-hire contract, which essentially means even though I'm recording the footage, I'm producing it with my own equipment, I'm using my own eye and my own judgments to create it, the company owns it. The company owns it completely outright, and it is their property to do with as they see fit, and I have absolutely no rights in this situation whatsoever. Yes, I have absolutely no right to the footage that I produce or create whatsoever. But, notably, usually when I ask almost every single producer I've worked with if I am allowed to use the footage that I shot as a demo reel or to put it on my website, even though it is work for hire and I have no rights, their response usually is, "What? Yes, go, who cares? You're fine. Just as long as the project is out first." Yes, just as long as the project is out first. If the contract was completely supreme and enforced as written, that means I would not be allowed to talk anything about this project that I worked on. This project which I worked on 7 years ago. Now, at the time, the vehicles in this project were not yet released, and so this information was considered sensitive and should not be released to the general public, even though we were filming on major city streets, which was completely available to the public. But that's not I'm not here to debate the legalities of. The important thing is, technically, I could still be sued for talking about or showing this video that I recorded while I was on the job for the purposes of the job. These vehicles were released in the fall of 2019. This commercial has long since aired and is now long since off the air. This footage is over 7 years old. There is absolutely nobody in the film industry who is, one, going to see this and care, or two, going to try to push legal action against me for a behind-the-scenes clip that I took 7 years ago. Now, if I were to have put this footage up the day it was shot, especially publicly, oh, you bet I am in hot water. I would also be a complete and total Hey, that was a good use of a bleep. You see, even though contracts like to claim that they are going to go on forever and ever and ever, in fact, American contracts specifically have this wonderfully stupid phrase in them I can't believe is allowed for some reason, called, quote, in perpetuity and throughout the universe. Think about this for a second. American law, which usually does not hold up in other countries because it is strictly American law and not global law, believes that they can enforce something not only for all time, but across the entire universe. Very bold of any American company to believe that anything outside of the planet has any interest in them whatsoever. In fact, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Mars, go, just take it all. Take it all. See what are they gonna do? What are they gonna do? So the contracts are mostly just for lawyers. However, there are other kinds of contracts. There are, for example, social contracts. For example, yesterday my friend decided to come up here and talk to me about a very personal situation. The situation basically involved who was trying necessarily. Exactly, I'm not going to reveal that information because I would be a complete dick for doing so, especially on the internet where like tens of people will watch this video. There's also other kinds of social contracts. For example, I worked on this fantastic music video this week. Oh, it's blurred. Why is it blurred? Because the music video hasn't been released yet. Same reason why this song is absolutely not the song that I worked on because the song also hasn't been released. And to release another band's song on a completely unaffiliated channel, even though this is my personal channel and it is unlikely they would see it, would also be a dick move. In the same reason, working on a project, you would not reveal your friend's private information, or at least you shouldn't if you're actually a good person. You should not reveal other people's projects when they haven't had the chance to reveal it themselves because it's their projects. You also do not reveal the contents of what you're working on. So, the important thing is, after the project is finished, you can go ahead and say something. Verbally, perfectly okay too. Now, if the project has just wrapped, wait a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks. Sometimes I like to wait up to a year to say something because then I really don't have to worry. Another reason I don't have to worry is because lawyers will not try to push legal action against a random crew worker for saying a random thing to their random friends, unless they're revealing important trade secrets or showing off stuff. This video that I recorded for my mother, my friends, my mother, this footage was working with sensitive information on a project that I worked on very recently. If I were to reveal any details from the project, especially because this ad is not out yet, and it probably won't be out yet for a couple of months, that would be not only a dick move, that would probably land me in legal trouble. Or, in my case, much more likely, the producers, who I am personal friends with, would blacklist me. And I would lose a friend, and I would lose future jobs. We cannot have that. But it doesn't mean that you can't show clips of things if you are anonymizing the content being recorded. For example, one clip that's only the clapboard with all sensitive information written out. Oh, come on, even the time? I'm not allowed to show the time. But there's also sensitive information written on the clapboard that could tell you what the project is. Be smart. Do not be dumb. But for example, I worked on this project a few weeks ago that I wasn't allowed to talk about at the time. Why did my lights change again? I am going crazy. I am absolutely losing my mind right now. A few weeks ago, I worked on this project, which I can now say was Survivor. It was very, very cool. I can also talk about it because the project is now long since finished. It is released. Everybody who needed to know about it knows about it now. Very cool project, by the way. Really fun time. Really disappointed I couldn't talk about it at first. So at the end of the day, what does an NDA entail in my kind of line of work? Essentially, it is the social contract to say, if the project has not been released, it is not your responsibility to release it, nor should you do anything to promote that and take the thunder away from the actual people doing it. If you recorded actual video from it, you should still probably ask permission, and they will most likely just say, well, yeah, of course, it's just for your reel. If the project is dealing with extremely sensitive trade secrets, or things that can definitely be sold to make a profit, or if they have a huge team of lawyers at their disposal, for example, like a good manufacturing company like don't mess with the NDA. Don't do it. Don't post it. Don't talk about it, don't do anything like that. It is not worth it. But if, for example, you still have a clip that you absolutely love and it really means the world to you and you're afraid that, well, you don't think that it has trade secrets, but like maybe it does, but like maybe it doesn't, who can really possibly be certain? The people who work at the company, they could possibly be certain. Forward it to them, they will take a look at it, they will let you know if you can or cannot use it. I have also done this for large-scale biotechs. I have done this for industrial manufacturers. I have done this for medical companies, especially medical companies. It is perfectly okay to ask somebody for permission first to use something. And then if they say no, make it a private reel. That may not be good advice. Now, why does this matter? Well, it matters because y'all, I want to make weekly videos, or somewhat mostly weekly videos, and I want to show you the stuff that I work on. And I have come face to face with the unfortunate reality that a lot of the things that I work on are under NDA, and I'm not really allowed to talk about them, which is in stark contrast from the things that I did 10 years ago. Right? Maybe I was under NDA back then too, and I just didn't care because I was in my 20s. Huh. There are a lot of things you do in your 20s that in retrospect were probably a really, really bad idea. In fact, I'm sure I'm going to be looking at this in my 40s and thinking this is a really, really bad idea what I'm recording right now. In fact, while I'm at it, let's just go ahead and say the content, statements, opinions, commentaries, analysis, interpretations, observations, and all other materials expressed, published, distributed, or otherwise communicated by me are provided solely for general information and educational purposes. Nothing I express, whether written, spoken, recorded, posted, shared, transmitted, or otherwise communicated, constitutes or is intended to constitute legal advice, legal representation, or the practice of law in any jurisdiction. All views and opinions expressed are my own personal views and are not intended to substitute for advice from a qualified attorney licensed in your jurisdiction. No portions of my content shall be relied upon as a basis for making legal decisions, making legal action, refraining from legal action, or otherwise affecting your legal rights or obligations. Nothing in the video constitutes legal, financial, tax, business, or other professional advice. Always consult a licensed professional regarding your specific situation before making any decisions that could affect your rights, obligations, or interests. By continuing to watch this channel and consume this content, you acknowledge and agree that you are doing so voluntarily and at your own risk. How was that?
It was pretty good.
Thanks. Hire me for voice work. Hire me, please.